Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Healthspan Academy. I'm your co-host here, Craig Shearhart. This is my co-host, Kyle Freiberger. And today's focus, we're going to talk about mobility. And this is a topic that's fairly near and dear to me. I've had a whole history of mobility issues, and when I got my 23andMe results, it told me I was genetically prone to injuries. So that was at least a little bit of self-validation. So it's really motivated me to take a look at my own mobility. I know Kyle's done a lot of work in his own mobility as well. So we're excited to talk about this topic today and open up about some of the stuff that we've found effective for our own bodies, and then that's also translated in some of the people we've worked with. So
I did my 23andMe and I got elite athlete characteristics or traits, but I am not making any money by becoming being an elite athlete. I'm not. I played hockey as a kid, but
those
I was
liars.
never any good. I don't know about that one,
Yeah,
but
that's funny.
yeah, man, mobility. It's been a crazy transformation in my life when I actually started to focus on the mobility. And I know you've you know have a very specific, special place in your life for it. You know, I, why don't you tell us a little bit about your program that you run currently, the 5 pillar method? I know you
Sure.
do a mobility program in there. I've watched some of your videos. Really well done.
Oh, thanks, man.
What are you trying to maybe just tell us about it, and then what you're kind of trying to accomplish? And
Sure. Yeah. So just a brief history on it. So like growing up, I guess I don't want to go too deep down the injury cave, but I've had a ton of injuries growing up, and it every time I saw a physical therapist, I saw that as like, first it's kind of annoying, and then as you start to learn a little more about it, I took like a kin course in high school and stuff, and you get more educated on it, and then you start to get interested and kind of fascinated by the whole process. So that got the wheels rolling, and then that brought me into like biomechanics through engineering and in school, and then started working down academia, and then circled back to this stuff because my real goal was trying to help other people with their pain. And so basically just started accumulating this stuff together from different disciplines. So like the stuff I'd learned from my own physical therapy, stuff I'd learned from doing yoga classes over the years, stuff I'd learned from like functional fitness and Olympic lifting, stuff I learned from Kelly Starrett and guys like Aaron Horskig and Andrea Spino, who like started the whole functional range conditioning. And it's every time you come across like a mentor like that there, and you get these golden nuggets and you try that stuff out and works, that was just really exciting to me. So I kind of built a structure around some of my own mentors. And I think that for me, that was kind of the missing piece in all the programs that I'd tried, is that there's yoga, and yoga is kind of in its own box, right? And then there's like self releases and that Kelly Starrett kind of mad scientist stuff. And there's not much of a structure to that. And then there's FRC, which is like this program that's great for like end range stability, which is that piece that a lot of people are missing. They think stretching, and they miss the activation at end range. And that's
mm-hmm.
where you're most susceptible to injuries. So the program's kind of a mix mash of all those different disciplines and all the stuff that I've tried over the years and stuff. And I've really taken the best pieces that have worked personally for me and the pieces that have worked for the clients. And we've kind of taken this into a guided structure. So because mobility is not one of those things that most people love to do on their own, they aren't super motivated. And you and I are probably different animals when it comes to that, but most people just don't look forward to it, and especially comparison to running like a CrossFit style gym where people are there for the intensity. And when you tell them to slow things down and follow this routine that's actually meant to slow your heart rate down, it's just this drastic difference, right? So we've kind of dumbed it down, and I don't want to say dumbed it down. We've made it simple, right? So it's guided. We kind of walk you through the process. And then the 5 pillars are kind of like, we talk about releasing tissue. We talk about opening up joint space. We talk about lengthening tissue. We talk about alignment. And then we talk about stability, like activating in end range. So that's what the 5 pillars are and kind of the base foundation of it. That's kind of led to me putting these programs together. And I've put a few programs together over the years. And I find like, I've done some guided stuff, and that's what I love. That helps you get into that mind state. That music starts to calm you and gets you to that parasympathetic state and starts to get you relaxed. So I've taken bits and pieces from, the meditation stuff I've used. And I try not to go too heavy into the anatomy because I know that can send people's heads spinning, but there's a little bit of an education component too. So we will flash pictures of anatomy just so people have an idea of what the muscle looks like and where it is when they're trying to target it. And then the program's really geared towards helping you become your own mad scientist, because the exercises aren't just in a box. They're just like, they're meant for you to figure out the position. What exactly should the stretch look like for you? So the video is there to give you an idea, but we kind of like work you through how to figure out what that stimulus should feel like. What are you feeling for when you're in those positions? What's the goal of that? And how do you modify to kind of best fit your own body? So that's kind of what the cueing is based on when we get into that. Yeah, it's been received pretty well so far. I've been doing the style of mobility for the last like 6 months, and I've personally found a lot of gains to it. And we've got like the members are now pretty excited about it. So so far so good, and it's been solid. So
this is what I needed. This is what I needed like 7 years ago when I started really understanding that I was pretty immobile.
I know, right?
Like we kind of, I guess, you're touching on, habit building, right? Like how to make the habit easier. Like as a habit coach, I'm trying to focus with my clients on even, people still do not understand what that means by making the habit as easy as possible, because we still bite off more than we can chew all the time because we think we can, and we can short term, but long term, having like that structured approach or that guided approach, and that you don't have to think about what you're going to do for your mobility session that day. You just have to get on and watch the video and then follow along. Like
you just turn your brain off and go. And then like I think anytime you can create that, and that's why people come to classes, right? There's people that might know what they're talking about, but if you have someone that just walks you through it and it's like an unbiased version of what you maybe should be doing, it's super valuable.
And if you can spread some knowledge, like in there, just subtle, like people, myself specifically, I don't want to talk for the general public here, but I crave off of knowing. Like I love anatomy, and I've I've read a few books on anatomy just to get my lingo up to snuff. But when I learn about what the muscle is, and like I don't need to know the names even per se, but exactly what what I'm accomplishing by releasing my my trapezoid muscle, or like where that's affecting me up into my neck and down into my back and across into my into my front, and like understanding kind of a little bit of the biomechanics, it gives you a little bit more incentive to do it. And and then once you do it and you see a little bit of result, then the habit starts to stick, right? You start to crave the results, right?
Exactly.
That's awesome.
And eventually, if you're lucky, you actually start to enjoy the process. Some people may never get there, but I tell you, that's the most valuable thing to me, is that it's that it gets results, sure, and it's good for us. But when you can learn to enjoy it, that's like next level. And that's like your 20 minutes that you actually look forward to. Huge game changer. So I want to dive into a little bit of your specific journey with mobility, because I know you've made that a big focus lately. Talk about your biggest sticking points through that, and then how you've managed to resolve some of those.
Man, I feel like this is just going to be, I just want to ask you more questions, but we'll go back and forth here a little bit.
Sure, man.
So, my main career is being a pilot. A lot of sitting. I have a huge passion for my job. Love my job. I've been doing it since I was a kid, and kind of maybe 8-9 years ago started really understanding that there is a health aspect to my my life, and I do want to be a healthy person, and I want to be able to golf when I'm 100. I know I've said that before on the podcast, but it's true. Like I'm aiming for that. I'm gonna aim high and do what I can to get there.
Yeah, I love that, man.
Yeah. So, I start asking myself all the time, like, what little things do I need to do daily to get myself there? And, when I'm sitting for a job all the time, which is, it's a fairly common thing with technology and office jobs. And I know it's a very common problem that we've asked our experts about on previous podcasts. I started really looking at specifically me and where my impingements were and where my mobility was lacking. And I really started doing that through the CrossFit gym, your programs. I started surrounding myself with other people like chiropractor, like Dr. Dan, we've had on an episode, my athletic therapists, working with them, they helped inform me, give me exercises. It took a lot of self motivation as well. Got the book, The Supple Leopard, which is an amazing like encyclopedia on stretches.
Such a great read.
If you ever, we'll put it in the show notes, but it's an amazing read.
Guy's so freaking smart.
Yeah, you just open it up into the index, and it just shows you all your muscles. They're all color coded, and you pick which one's sore, and you just flip to that page, and they've got, there's probably 5 to 10 exercises at least on what you can do to help that area, right?
It's true.
So using stuff like that, buying the equipment, really was, getting addicted to. I started getting addicted to it because in CrossFit specifically, or going to the gym, when I would do, a squat, and when you learn how to do a squat properly, you realize that your mobility sucks because we wear shoes and we have these high heels, these heels on our shoes. So our Achilles are shortened, and it just, your rabbit holes down from there, and you realize, okay, I need to work on my ankle mobility. And you start working on your ankle mobility, and, it might take some time, but when you start to see the results and you start to be able to deadlift, better, now you're deadlifting a little bit more weight. And, I've never been a crazy heavy lifter. I'm not here to try and break a world record, but, when you can lift the weight properly and your body is functioning properly, you don't have all of these, hurts, aches, and pains that shouldn't be there. Like, it's a very beautiful process when your body is lifting properly, right?
Absolutely.
And that's something that is continuous and never ends. So then, you see those results, and I just started really going down a rabbit hole of learning how to be even more mobile. And like you say, it's not just stretching. Like, I've gone to hot yoga, and I've done lots of different stretching techniques, but now my personal routine is I 20 minutes every morning, and it's dynamic stretching. Like, typically it's either a form, like making love with, to a foam roller or a lacrosse ball, very common, or I have like a little circuit routine that's just like a dynamic stretches, like leg swings and walking lunges and stuff like that to warm up the joints. And then every time at nighttime, we watch typically one episode of Netflix at nighttime, and I personally make that okay with myself because I stretch for at least the first 15, 20 minutes of that. And so I get to watch TV still, but instead of sitting on the couch, I'm just in a different position. And I don't know how long I hold them for, but I hold these different positions. I try to activate and release, and and really those habits have just I think they've really helped set me up for that long-term success. So.
It's a game changer.
Yeah, man.
And it's nice not waking up with your joints hurting for no reason.
It just
I didn't even work out yesterday. Why the hell is my knee sore?
And that's just it. Like, and people have to realize it's a lifelong thing. It's not a short-term goal. It's a lifelong thing. Like,
for sure.
As different parts of our body change and muscles form, or we have strains or issues, like, it's going to be continuous learning curve. That's why like a program is great. And leads me to my next question for you.
Sure.
Like, specifically, who do you think could benefit from your program? And then even more so, can you, as an individual, like, is each video specific to a targeted area? So like, if I per se was the client and I wanted to focus on, like, let's say I did leg day and I really want to focus on my legs, like, is that one specific video, or how did you make that work?
Yeah. That's a tough question to answer, is like, who is it for? I think at the baseline, it has to be someone that's willing to follow it. Right. So we're not holding your hand. You're not coming to a location. They are still independent. So number one, you have to be self-motivated. Number two, well, you don't really need much equipment. So it is pretty accessible. I think like the next thing would be, how easily are you discouraged, and how much patience do you have? Because mobility doesn't happen overnight. Mm-hmm. There are some kind of, magic pills you can take, like an exercise where you get a position, you do this exercise and there's a change afterwards, but that change isn't usually lasting, right? So to get lasting results, that's why this program we're launching it as an 8-week thing. So it takes some patience.
I guess
Yeah.
what I'm trying to understand is like, anybody can do it. You have to want to do it, obviously, right? But
Yeah.
I don't want to. I just want to make sure people don't feel discouraged by thinking, oh, I'm immobile. It's probably for an athlete to be doing it, right? Or
Yeah, but everything scales from that, right? And
right.
that's the conundrum for like the average Joe, is that there's no research for us. Like there's a research for pro athletes, there's a research for the chronically ill, but in the middle we kind of have to extrapolate and figure out what is it the average person needs, right? Kind of. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a bit of like analysis and kind of like a bit of an art to programming too. So, and in terms of how we structure that, it's gen, like statistically, we try to hit every muscle that needs it for as much attention as like an average person would. And that's tough to generalize, right? But we know that most people have tight hips. Most people have tight shoulders. We know as people age, their overhead range starts to decline. So we think like, what are the sort of the lowest hanging fruit? What are the biggest things that we know we can prevent in the programming to start? And stuff like ankles are important, but if you're not doing a lot of deep squatting, it's not as critical. But if you're an all Olympic lifter or CrossFitter, for sure, so that stuff gets that much more important. So we still do ankles, we still do wrists, we still do that kind of accessory stuff, but we like, that's kind of how the programming starts. The first question is, what is it that most people need the most help with?
Right.
And then so that's like number one. We think closest to midline is shoulders and hips. Those are the prime movers. And then, ankles and elbows and wrists. The further we get from to the extremities, the less critical it seems to be. So we do a little bit of neck stuff too. We don't dive too deep into the neck, but there's a little bit of kind of joint sort of hygiene that'll help with that stuff too. So yeah, there's an art to it. And anytime you generalize program, you're going to miss somebody, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we try to hit as many people or as many, I don't want to say clinical, but like applicable questions or things that people struggle with from sitting or, a bad posture, that kind of stuff. So we're trying to undo those sort of most common things is how we structure that programming.
Yeah, just those two come up so often, right? Like if people could see how good they would feel after putting in the required time, more people would do it, right? It's
For
just
sure.
being and it's up to guys like yourself or us on the podcast. Like our whole mission is to try and inform people that it's not crazy rocket scientists, and it doesn't take an insane amount of your time or effort, but it does take continuous practice.
Yeah.
And that like we'll make it as easy as possible for you. It still takes some effort,
Yeah.
but it's not it is life changing over
For
time,
sure.
right?
For sure. Like I think you can rely a little bit on books, you can rely a little bit on mentors, you can rely on your whatever discipline of mobility you do that you focus on. But at the end of the day, you really have to get in tune to how your body's responding to it. And like, yes, it has to be enjoyable, but if your body's not responding to it the way that it theoretically should be, and some bodies just respond differently, right? Like some people can do a yoga session and start cramping or just weird stuff happens depending on their anatomy. So I think that's part of the issue too. And I think it'd be naive for me to say that this is for everyone. Like you have to try it and see, but we've tried to be as inclusive as we can. And that so far it seems to be working for most people have given it a shot, and we've gotten pretty good results. So that's the best really we can hope for.
Yeah, absolutely. You can hope that somebody takes even one snippet of valuable information that they think would work for their lifestyle, and that is that's that feeling of success for us as coaches. Like that's what I focus on when I write my next newsletter or I'm on to my next client. Like it's those tiny changes. Like I say this so often because it's so true. It's those tiny 1% changes compounded over a lifetime. And that is the best chance you have of, practicing and setting yourself up for like an optimized
health,
right?
Yeah.
In the later years or even now. And
yeah. And the
awesome,
tricky
man.
thing when you start to programming this is not getting skewed by your own biases, right? It's like not like this worked so well for me, this must work for everybody. And that's all of a sudden your new magic exercise you give everybody. So that's the art of coaching is being able to apply what works for you in kind of a more generalized lens. So it applies to generally more people, because sometimes you hit the nail on the head, sometimes you don't, right?
That's something we have to always keep in mind. Like when you're trying to teach, or even just in relationships, I struggle with this one a lot because what works for us doesn't or even myself might not work for you or the next person, right? But
Mm-hmm.
when you love somebody like your partner, or you have your friends and you love your friends, like you want nothing more than to take that problem that you see, or maybe not even just that, but just that thing that worked for you so well, you're like, oh, it must work for them, come on. Like,
Yeah.
so now I'm just like throwing all these ideas, crazy biohacks and crazy things that I
Yeah.
do. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, you
I
got to
know.
try this to my girlfriend or my buddies, or, but I have realized pretty quickly that it's, I don't take it offense, I don't take offense to it if they don't want to. All I try and do is now just inform, like I do as much as I can, whether it's gaining the research specifically to show them, or, sometimes I just buy a book on Amazon and I'll leave it on my girlfriend's nightstand. And if she reads it, she reads it. And,
Yeah.
like some of them she's found value, some she hasn't. And, even if I found value in all of them, like it's crazy. And we all learn differently. Right. So
Yeah. You can
it's
lead the
kind of
horse to the water, right?
yeah. I keep looking at this one question I have written down that I really want to ask you. Like,
Sure.
what is the most important thing that you have learned in your life? And then how did it like change your life? That, I don't know. I just find that it's such a powerful question coming from, I know you personally, and I know
Yeah.
some of the changes that you've made. Like, what is it?
For me, it's a tough question to answer, right?
I know.
Because like it's been lifelong learning. But the thing that stands out to me, just off the top of my head, is when I made the switch from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. And I don't remember a
Mhm.
specific time, but I grew up, and God bless my dad, but he is in a fixed mindset. That's just how he was raised. He thinks
Yeah.
like the genes that you were given, you're only so smart, you're only so athletic, and you just work with what you got, and you can't really do much about it. And
Mhm.
and that's like, he taught me how to drive, be like, just do it. It's
Yeah.
like,
Like we had the same dad, man.
yeah, seriously. And maybe it's a generational thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
But when that switched and I realized that, you know, celebrities or doctors, anyone you kind of like growing up that you idolize, they're not different. They've just gone through the path and they just took the time to figure out the issue, and they really dedicated themselves to their craft. And
Mhm.
to me, that's the most important lesson, because that opens up a whole new world. And that, like, I'm not a billionaire, but I feel good about the path that I'm on now. And that
Yeah.
lets you wake up every day with a bit of confidence, self assurance, knowing that no matter what problems you have, there's a solution. And knowing that you're resourceful enough to find those solutions. You might not have an answer, but at least if you start knowing what kind of questions to ask, what skills need to get better, where you can delegate this stuff, what areas you can become an expert on if you really want to, right? Like there's courses on literally everything. The courses and books, information's never been more accessible and less expensive. Like it's crazy. The world is like your oyster now. So that, to me, that's probably the biggest lesson. How about you?
Oh, that's funny, man. I literally had
Yeah.
this exact same, because I remember specifically when I switched,
Yeah.
and well, it's funny. Like I've always had this mentality of maybe learning and growing, but even more so, specifically the ego, and that, when you, for me specifically, it was after a bad relationship, and not bad in the sense that it was fighting or this or that, or it was bad in the way that should be working, but it's not. And you're
Mhm.
like, why is this not working?
Yeah.
It's just, it's so, like, you think you're two smart people, or you have great communication skills, you have all these attributes that you think both of you have, yet you can't, like, it's just miserable, like
Yeah,
miserable, like emotionally and intellectually. And
for sure.
so for me, it was starting to get into some books like from Ryan Holiday, Ego is the Enemy and the Obstacle is the Way. And it kind of falls back, and I think it ties into what you were talking about, getting into a learner mentality. And the only way to get into that learner mentality is to really, like, look at your ego and, like, actually figure out why you have it and understand why it's there. And it's always going to be there. But then when you start to actually understand the ego, you can actually be mindful and aware of when it's happening, and then kind of say, oh yeah, like, I guess I don't actually know the answer to that. I'm just think I do. And I'm like, now I don't want to be wrong. I'm scared of being wrong. And I tell you, like, I went captain at Air Canada about 4 years ago now, or 3 years ago. And just before I went captain, I started down that path and of looking at my ego. And that for me was like life altering, because, in my job, in my relationship, I surround myself with people that are, smarter than me, or maybe not even just smarter than me, but like good at something that I'm not good at, which is anybody around me is good at one thing better than me. Like
For sure.
when you accept that, let's take aviation as an example. Like, the flight attendants in the back, they're good at their jobs. My co-pilot has a different experience than I do. When we deal with weather, I talk to dispatch, and they're like an amazing at weather and
For sure.
dissecting it. And I talk to air traffic control about, anything traffic. And then, yeah, sure, I'm the captain and I'm this guy that everybody looks up to, and I'm sure I'm the boss at the end of the day, and it's all on my shoulders. But I really am just sitting there listening to everybody around me, and then coming up with the best possible solution. And, when you can accept that in your daily life, and you can accept that with your partner, it gets super addicting, and it's huge. 100%.
It is huge.
It's still very hard sometimes, but it's huge.
Yeah. And it's an emotional thing, right? Because everyone does know more than you, but everyone has the ability to annoy you too, right? But if you just see the world through a lens where everyone is potentially your advisor on something, it is like a switch. And I see that with my staff, and, in my relationships, and, I've done a lot of learning in my life, and I know some stuff, but I don't know everything about everything. And I think that's an important distinction. And you have to remind yourself of that. And that's why I find what relationships are great for. Your constant criticism, to reminder that you're not perfect. And just to spin off of that a little bit, because you talked about that. I've never learned more about myself than I have after a breakup.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it's the most devastating thing emotionally. It just drains you. You think it's just easy to feel sorry for yourself. But the amazing thing is, you always come out the other side stronger, and you will never settle for less than what you've already had. So your life can only get better. So a close friend of mine told me that once when we were both going through a breakup, and I was like, man, that's pretty profound and pretty motivating, pretty cool. So that stuck with me. And I think like that kind of ties into it all. It's just all learning experience. And the more you can absorb and take out of every avenue, that's really how you can start to apply your intelligence in whatever avenue you choose to follow. Right. So
I feel like we were very fortunate to find good mentors, because I had a very similar thing told to me after that breakup. And, I've never really been one to live in the past or in regret. Like, I've read some Eckhart Tolle, and one thing that he says that always sticks out to me, and I always remind myself of, is the future causes anxiety and the past causes depression. So let's live in the moment. And, sure, we can plan for the future, and we can learn from the past, but, and I don't know, people, I say it a lot, and I think I say it out loud sometimes, mostly just because I'm still trying to remind myself, but focusing on things that we can't change, or don't focus on things we can't change. Right. So, focus on things that we can change. And that I just remind myself so often, because even when we're emotionally getting triggered for different parts of our lives, like I find that like just reminding yourself, like, what can I control? And you can't control anything that's happened, but you can control, if it happens again, how you react next time, and
control your response to it. And that's all you can control.
Yeah.
And there's power in that, right?
And it's like mobility. It's like everything else. You're not going to get really good at it right away, because me personally, I have 33 years behind me. So, that's 33 years of habits that I need to change. So it's if I can see, like, let's say getting triggered, getting mad, like if I can become aware of it a little bit quicker than I did last time, that is, progress towards a result that I am really craving to succeed on. So
100%, man. Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's,
man.
I want to circle back because usually we end these episodes talking about our people's habits and we talk a little bit about ours, but I want to get
Right.
more specific. And we talked about mobility, we've talked about biohacking, we've talked about exercise. There's always all this stuff on your plate, but I want to know where your focus is at these days. What are you most focused on in terms of your health and fitness, and what do your habits look like around that?
Yeah, man. That's amazing. I love the question and I love talking about it. So I'm going to try not to rant here. And it is changing all the time. For me personally, one of my biggest wins recently has been my gut health. I think we talked about it
Yeah.
on another episode. So I won't go down that path again, but it's, it really has changed my life, the
Mm-hmm.
gut health. And then before that was sleep. That really changed my life. So right now, like I basically haven't been flying for about a year and a half.
That's crazy. It's been that long,
Yeah,
eh?
it's insane.
Wow.
It sounds like we're going back in September, so
Nice.
that's good.
Sweet.
So actually, that's probably what I'm focusing on the most. Is now that I truly believe that COVID is coming to an end to a degree,
Mm-hmm.
or controllable, a place of control. Um, I believe that aviation is going to just get nuts, and my
Yeah.
job's going to go from no work to the busiest I've probably ever been in my life.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of great habits, great morning routine, great nighttime routine, that have tied to, just I try not to tie it to a specific time in the day. I've always tried to tie my habits to specific cues, like waking up.
Mm-hmm.
So even if I go back to work and I'm crossing time zones and I'm waking up at different weird times, the cue is waking up, and then that triggers my morning routine no matter where I am. So I'm starting to really think about tools and things I can take on the road with me, because I feel the best I've ever felt, and I don't want to revert back to old habits. And you know, just yeah, there's so many different little tools and techniques, and I'm not going to go crazy. I got to say that the number one change for me and consistent habit that I've been practicing for, maybe 4 or 5 months now is the journaling one.
Nice.
Um, I'd read lots of books, listened to, several successful people, or even just, just several people that talk about journaling and, its pros, and how it sets you up for your day and how it gets you just thinking. And I still never believed in it, I guess, until I stopped and figured out my own. I kept buying journals online, and it would just be like, oh, 3 things you're grateful for, and
Yeah.
just these kind of generic things. But then I finally wrote out what I wanted in a journal,
Hmm.
and it's specific to me. And
Nice.
now I do it all the time, and now it's like,
It's more
the
meaningful.
topics are there, and it's
Yeah.
very, very much more meaningful. And so I got to say, like, that's pretty key, because one of my habits is just thinking about habits, so just taking that, even 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever, and just
That's awesome.
thinking. So that's been cool. What about yourself? What do you
Still
got going on
mobility.
over there?
Yeah. I know we talked
Yeah.
about that a lot already, but for
Yeah, man.
me, I think also because I'm developing this program, so I'm actually following the program just to be my own guinea pig to some degree,
Mm-hmm.
and be able to answer questions and getting figure out how our set list is and all that stuff, and everything's coming together. But that's still my number one. I still like nutrition's kind of fluxed all over the place, and depending on how busy we are between Midday and I, still walking kilo to get some cardio in. That's like 4 times a week walking the dog and getting out there and getting some zone two.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then exercising when we can. And this is probably it's just funny that people think like gyms are closed. You must have so much time in your hands.
Yeah.
But it really is hard for me to carve out time to get some lifting in. So that's been lowest on the priority. So that'll be first thing probably when we reopen the doors, is getting back
Mm-hmm.
into that. And hopefully using some of the mobility that I've been able to get. Cause like, that's always a challenge for me, is if I go too deep into the lifting and gymnastics and stuff, I just build mass really easily and I lose flexibility and mobility. So when I get a chance to zone in on mobility, I sort of intentionally scale back on the other stuff a little bit to give me a better chance to really make some big gains with mobility. So that's still number one. Other stuff's still there, kind of on
Mm-hmm.
deck, on the back burner. But yeah.
It's funny, COVID, everybody thinks I'm just golfing all the time, and I really want to be. And I golf a good amount, but I'm not the type of person to like to waste an opportunity when I get a year and a half off from my job.
Yeah.
Very, very, very fortunate. I didn't have the financial strains that, many other people did. But it never stopped me either way to starting a few businesses and trying it out, and just like seeing what type of person I am when it comes down to it. And, like you alluded to, like I'm busier than ever because of this opportunity. So it's pretty
Yeah.
wild. And now I'm trying to like figure out how I'm going to keep certain things going that have been kind of successful, this podcast or some of the other stuff I've been doing. How do you work it in when my full-time job comes back and I'm flying all the time, and, but it's totally doable. And
For sure.
it just gives me a little bit more, it gives me a little bit more structure and motivation in my day, and
Absolutely.
that little bit more of that sense of responsibility, and yeah, I love it all. So it's been very, very rewarding so far.
That's awesome, man. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for sitting in on our chat today. We talked about, I guess, a bunch of stuff, but we sort of focused on mobility. Hopefully you found that helpful. Thanks a lot, guys. And we'll see you again next time on Healthspan Academy.